Welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Russian aggression near the Kerch Strait was a hot topic of discussion at the G20 Summit in Argentina. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau all called on Russia to release the 24 Ukrainian sailors. To talk more about the key outcomes of the G20 Summit, we're joined in the studio today by Maksym Iali. He's an expert on international relations and senior research fellow at the Institute of World History of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for coming.
Hello.
So let's talk overall about G20 first. What would you call are or is the brightest outcome of the meeting?
For us, you mean?
Of course, for Ukraine.
Well, of course, the best and the most important result for us is that Crimea, annexation of Crimea, in the context of the conflict in the Kerch Strait, has come back, I would say, for discussion on a top level again. Because, as you know, during last few years, all the discussions were about the conflict on the Donbass, but not the topic of the annexation of Crimea almost disappeared. So that's the important outcome. And of course, as you know, before the summit, the topic of Ukraine was out of agenda. And again, the world leaders discussed, and also with, I would say, the key reason of the conflict. I mean, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, discussed the situation and how to solve this conflict. That's the most important outcome, and as I would say, benefit another is cancellation of the meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin.
I wanted to ask you about that in particular. The fact that the meeting between the U.S. President Donald Trump and the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, didn't happen or got cancelled. What type of message could we take out of it? Not for Ukraine only, but for all of the countries on international arena that are involved in any case in the conflict that is happening in the east of Ukraine right now?
Well, actually, the reason of the cancellation due to Donald Trump's tweet was actually that Russian Federation didn't give back our sailors and ships, and that was the reason. But of course, the main reason was the conflict itself, which is from the point of view of international law. Was absolute violation of it, of several resolutions and conventions. We also take into account, of course, you know, that Chancellor Müller, who is ours, not as President Trump, so to say, also played, I think, rather important role in this cancellation, because, as you know, President Trump doesn't listen to advisors, and the members of his administration when it comes for the meeting with his very good friend, Mr. Putin. But the case, I mean, that Mr. Müller announced that his ex-lawyer, Mr. Cohen, pledged guilty that he gave,
Congress.
In Congress, that he gave, that he lied. Right, concerning the negotiations between Mr. Putin and Kremlin, so to say, and members of his team also played an important role. And from my point of view, the consequences of it could be very serious for Mr. Trump. And in coming few months, I'm sure we shall listen a lot of new details in that case, and of course it will be very serious obstacle for Mr. Trump to negotiate with Mr. Putin and to solve any serious issues, especially concerning Ukraine.
Those new details you just mentioned in the case of Mr. Cohen, what kind of damage could be done with those new details to U.S. President Donald Trump's career as a politician?
Well, that depends, I would say, if you know that it has already damaged his image, because as you know, Mr. Trump used to repeat, no collusion, no collusion, but as we see, there was. Probably was, and how serious was that collusion? Mr. Mueller is trying now to doing his best to investigate, and also there are some another aspects in this case that I'm sure will bring very serious problems to Mr. Trump. Not his image just, but probably it will lead to much more serious results.
Like what?
Well, impeachment. I'm sure it's not a matter of coming months, but probably coming year.
In the long run, you mean, right?
Yeah. There are the chances that Mr. Trump will not participate in 22 elections, from my personal point of view, are pretty high and rising recently, especially after latest news.
Coming back to
Mr. Manafort also, as you know, pledged guilty, yeah, and there can be some more details concerning that case. From my point of view, Mr. Trump made a very serious mistake, from which his best friends actually they worried him before running the election, that he shouldn't have spoiled his relationship with the special services. FBI, by the way, the latest news today, right? Mr. Comey will also be in the Senate, giving also answering questions, right? And also concerning the collusion and the elections 2016, and also investigation of the ties of Trump's team with Russians.
Do you think, or is it possible that if Trump totally turns his back on Mr. Putin right now and imposes new sanctions against Russia, would it make him look better?
Well,
and help his situation somehow at this point?
Somehow. And I would say now he has to impose new sanctions, and not only concerning the conflict in Kerch Strait, but as you know, the second part of Salisbury. Also, second part of sanctions is going to take place in recent months, I guess, not right now. From my point of view, it will take place already in January, after new members of the Congress, elected in November, will start their work. It will take place. But definitely now they are working out the level of sanctions and how serious they're going to be.
What about other European, or not only European, countries that also participated in the G20 summit that already approved their condemnation of the situation that is happening in the Azov Sea? Are we going to see additional sanctions from other European countries towards Russia?
Well, as you know, situation inside the EU, there was a split, right, between the positions of different members. Not very good for us news. I would say that Germany and France, which are the main countries, are doubting, I would say hesitating, right, waiting for new proofs. But as we see during last days, they're going to have them all. And there are already proofs that that conflict took place outside, definitely, of territorial waters of Russian, whatever they think they have, yeah? I guess also taking into account the resolution of European Parliament during last months, also in which they worried Russian Federation that it could lead to new sanctions, I guess, taken all together, not as quick as we would like to, but some sanctions will be also imposed. That depends just the level of how strict they could be.
Well, hopefully the international community imposes strict enough sanctions for Russia to actually come to its mind and stop doing whatever it's doing in the east of Ukraine, and not only. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
That was Maksym Iali. He is an expert on international relations and a senior research fellow at the Institute of World History of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. Thank you so much for watching UATV. Stay tuned for the rest.